I was almost gonna have to wear that Boston shirt all day long, but here I am in my Shock shirt now. And they could have, we only got one hero that super plays on this, the Reinhardt. It would have been nice to throw some Genji, maybe the Super Zenyatta in there. But I think this is going to be a really close game between these teams. I think Florida was extremely impressive last week, as well as San Francisco.
Sounds like you're asking a little bit more for Super merch and not Overwatch League merch, but that's fine. I'm sure you can get in touch with him. Maybe Mauricio will help him out and produce some of that stuff. That could be fun. Yeah, I got the Florida Mayhem one on as well. I guess that means my prediction's already locked in for me. But this one, in fairness, is probably a lot harder to call. Although, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure our desk all said they expected San Francisco to come out on top in this match.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have taken the Shock to come out on top in this one. I don't think it's too surprising. From Florida Mayhem last week, we really didn't see them play a ton of dive, but if you remember back to the Melee, this is your final, right? The Florida Mayhem, they play a lot of Tracer with Yaki. They're the first ones to really kind of bring out the Tracer type of composition, make it work. They kind of make it all the way to the finals, but they get stopped by the Shock.
Right, and we saw a bunch of different stuff in that series. That was back when we were seeing way more Reaper, Torbjorn, Echo was in there, and a bunch of May as well. Obviously, May not available for selection right now. And of course, last month, these two teams didn't really play against each other at all in the tournament.
No connection, really, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of time, between those matches now for these teams to have obviously worked on a bunch of things, and they come back together now in a different meta. And with a slightly different look between both of them. Let's have a look at the Florida Mayhem starting lineup, though. And this one probably shouldn't surprise you all that much here. Obviously, BQB and Yaki, the DPS position. We do not have Byram here, so Chris and Guy, but that's the more regular setup, I think, here for the support line.
Yes, that's the only thing that you look at, and that so probably changes as the series goes on. They bring Byram in to play more double flex support stuff with Chris in. You will probably see Chris play some Lucio, maybe some Brigitte.
Now, obviously, as we said, the Florida Mayhem haven't played San Francisco since that May Melee loss, but they've definitely been watching them. And we caught up with Yaki to give us a couple of insights on where he thinks the Shock are at and how he thinks the Mayhem will perform against them.
5월 토너먼트 패배 이후에 한 번도 만난 적이 없는데 이제 이번 정규 시즌 때 만나게 됐거든요. 저희 이제 슈퍼 선수 겐지도 한번 봤었고, 보스턴이랑 할 때 슈퍼 선수 겐지 봤었는데 좀 많이 쉬울 것 같아요. 아마도 이번에 슈퍼 선수 겐지를 보낸다면 아마 저희가 쉽게 승리하지 않을까 싶네요. 그리고 이제 좀 저희가 열심히 하고 있는 주기도 하고, 이번 열심히 해서 꼭 이겨보도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Obviously, there have been many critics of Super's Genji. There have also been many proponents of it. Many people have thought that it is the bee's knees.
Yaki said similar about Sideshow's Far, and we know how that turned out.
Oh God, I'd actually managed to wipe that from my memory. Yeah.
So you never know.
That is entirely true. So obviously, yeah, with some shade being thrown at Super's Genji, but we may not see it because now it's time for our connections presented by Xfinity. And if you've been watching your news feeds this week, you'll know that there's a new addition to the San Francisco Shock. Taiyo has been picked up by this team, a player that is very recognizable, especially if you've been around for a little while. First showing his skill way back in, I want to say 2017 at the World Cup. He's represented Japan all those years. Obviously, if you've heard him in interviews and stuff like that, he spent a lot of time and a lot of his education in the United States. So got very good English. He's a really interesting player, a lot of fun to talk to. And we saw a lot from him, especially in the third impact as well. A lot of the McCree, a lot of the Tracer, a lot of hit scan play from him initially.
Right. Well, this is a huge signing for San Francisco because this is a player a lot of other teams in the league were interested in. Going back to the off season, just kind of poking around the league and teams, like there were a lot of teams interested in him. He doesn't make it to the league at the beginning of the season, but now halfway through, he's a huge addition, especially to a team like the Shock. He can play so many different heroes.
And for Taiyo, always the bridesmaid, never quite the bride. A lot of second place results here through his contenders journey, and it's been quite a long one. It's been, what, 3 years? I think that Taiyo has spent competing contenders first for Jupiter, and then he was loaned out to third impact, and now obviously that team is no more, so he's found himself a new home. We had to catch up with Taiyo and ask him sort of what it meant for him to get the big call up to the Shock after spending a lot of time proving himself in Contenders.
I've been playing in Contenders for the past 2 to 3 years, and I've been able to only be second place twice, but now joining Shock, I really we'll be the world champions, and that's what I look forward to.
Absolutely impeccable dress sense as well. Can I just say
sure is like you.
Out of 10 from the judges. Well, not today. It's the one day that I'm not wearing something ridiculous.
I like as well. He's taken the Kevin Durant route of, you know, I've gotten second a bunch of times. What should I do? I'm going to take the hardest route, and I'm going to join the best team.
Yeah, listen, sometimes the path of least resistance isn't actually always the worst one. There's that old adage about how it's not the way to go. Taiyo's definitely still going to have to work on this team, and definitely still going to have to work in this matchup. He is in the starting lineup here for the San Francisco Shock. And, you know, if you've seen his stream, you know he plays a ton of Genji. So obviously, most of his official matches were played on, you know, hit scan heroes. But he now comes in as a flex DPS for this team. You should expect to see him go to Genji if that's required. And if you've seen some of his highlights, you know what he's capable of.
I think this also, yeah, I mean, you play him on Genji, he can play Ashe, McCree, Tracer. He solves a lot of problems potentially for the Shock.
Now let's move on and have a look at you know, two of the hardest hitting roles across these two teams in that flex tank role. Gargoyle versus Choi Hoban, two players that have received a ton of praise from us and plenty of MVP results as well from these matches. I mean, Gargoyle is very effective at getting value out of especially hyperspheres, but Choi Hoban is fantastic at setting up kills with that accretion stun. #1 in turning those rocks into kills.
Well, you know, Gargoyle is one of the strengths of the Florida Mayhem. Same with Choi Hoban. It's just crazy to look at Choi's stats, and we rarely mention him in that #1, 2 category in terms of off tanks. A lot of people hype up, you know, Fury, Gargoyle, Krong, Void. Choi, because he makes it look so easy. It's so effortless. You know how good he is as a player.
He was the Grand Finals MVP last year, if I'm not mistaken. He definitely gets plenty of talk, but you know, I think you and I, Matt, especially, we love giving player of the match to flex tanks. The amount of times we've given it to Hanbin or Choi is ridiculous. But when Sigma now is being played so much, not necessarily going to see him all the time here, but when he's played so much, he's a hero that does so very many things so well. You know, Kasoi does a ton of damage, a lot of peel. He's able to shield a ton. He's got good shield pressure as well. AoE damage, by the way. He does a heck of a lot. By the way, he also throws the enemy team into the air and slams them down like an RKO. So there's not a whole lot that Sigma can't do. And when good players get behind the driver's seat, the impact is impossible to deny.
Sigma is very strong. I think just has a lot in his kit to make him extremely effective. I really am. I think this is a series where both teams could come out and pull out some strats or compositions that we haven't seen from anybody else this far. We'll see if either of them decide to actually do something along those lines. As Fate switches over to Winston, Gargoyle, the Zarya. Okay, Choi on the Zarya as well. Maybe this is something we see. Do we see the Shock play McCree here? Interesting. Okay, so Taiyo play the Tracer. You'll have Striker on McCree, so they do not want to play the Genji here at the start.
Now, how does San Francisco play this? They're looking to get a lot of value out of Striker. The Florida Mayhem want to brawl. They absolutely want to pile in, but there it is from long range. See, Gargoyle gets picked off there. No shield available, and Violet finishes the kill, but Striker was definitely working him down.
Almost like the Mayhem's brawl is almost not as strong as the Shock, because the Shock have the Ryan, the Zarya, they have the McCree at close range, they have Brig and Baptiste, a really good spot to brawl this out of the Shock.
Well, it feels like the Reinhardt shield's there, so Striker can poke kind of safely without getting randomly picked out, but you don't even necessarily need the Ryan if you don't want it. Smurf obviously just feels really comfortable here, and he can control this choke very effectively. He'll force the Mayhem to go over or around, which will split the Mayhem up. Good immortality build there from Violet. We expect no less from him, and yet Fate overextends to try and find a kill that would never have come his way, considering his opponent's literally going to be killed.
There comes Smurf out of nowhere with a pin on the Gargoyle, so the Shock rolling thus far. Feels like the Mayhem have barely put down even any damage. As you see, all of their players, around 50% in terms of Ult Charge, the Shock, they've had a few ultimates already. So Violet with a good use of the Immortality and the Ant Matrix there.
Striker is getting an obscene amount of damage done right now, Matt. He has double BQB and 3 times the amount of damage that Yaki has. Now, different heroes, yes. But look at him. He sits here. He just sits here. That's all. That's the tweak. And he ultimate, if he needs to, goes for the Deadeye, will again force the Mayhem away from the brawl position they want to be in. Has to let that one go eventually, and now he needs to get away from the Coalescence, but Taiyo draws so much attention, and then he just recalls out. He's back to full health now. Trickhoven and Smurf are very close to key ultimates, and Smurf, I mean, it's a layup to try and hit a big shatter here.
They do lose Striker, so that is a lot of extra damage. There'll be a grab that comes down, and they catch Fate while he's using the Primal Rage. BQB in the backline will end up taking out Violet. This will be a big grab there from Gargoyle.
I mean, you have to use so much here for Florida, though. You combine the play with the grab, perhaps unnecessarily. The one good thing for you, though, is that you win that fight without having to use support ults. In fact, you actually build them during the course of it. So that might be another free fight for Florida here. But I don't know if the Shock saw BQB make that teleport play into the back. They were too busy trying to focus on the target of Trickhoven's Graviton Surge.
And if you're the Shock, maybe you realize that they have the support ult, you go and try and get at least one of them, potentially both out really quickly. They may actually be able to get both with getting Fate down. Can they force out Sound Barrier? They're going to have somebody put some pressure on to be able to do it.
Fate being down now means that San Francisco can use Ryan to get a lot of free positioning here. You notice the Mayhem just give this up.
No Lucio, though, to speed him in.
Oh, send the Zai in first. You love to see it. Trickhoven there's not really too bothered by taking a big hit from a Reaper, but Striker would have been, that's for sure. Here's the Sound Barrier now, but BQB gets stunned by a shield blast by the looks of things right at the start of that fight. He'll now stay out of sight and try and do this flank, and the Shock don't know he's here, so Violet goes down before he has a chance, and BQB really embodying the sneaky nature of what's required of a Reaper player.
A lot of interesting uses of the teleport. Like teleporting like mid-combat is something we don't see like a lot of players do.
But it's hard to track when there's so much stuff going on.
Right. The middle of the fight, just kind of TPing away and TPing behind the other team. They're just not really sure, like, is he trying to get away? Is he trying to get a flanking angle? Really interesting use. They spot BQB out, but it's all right. You have Coalescence, they're going to get aggressive.
Yeah, BQB just uses the space provided by Fate to teleport forward. This time it doesn't work out. He's stunned up and removed by Twilight. Deadeye to try and make some space, and Smurf gets the shadow that claims Gundam's here, which is not an easy kill to get otherwise. Fate makes the Moira so slippery. Yaki's Dragonblade doesn't get him much. He goes down the world. Don't tell Lassie, she'll freak out. And the San Francisco Shock will be back in control, not a moment too soon.
Yeah, and Florida does get it up to 97% though. They may only have one more shot at this. So we're going to hit 90% on the meter for the Shock, and the Shock have a lot of ultimates. This Death Blossom has to be big from BQB.
It's all about his setup and positioning, Matt. Yaki will play from the low ground. Here comes the Winston, but that's just a diversion. Oh, the Death Blossom doesn't work out. It was a defensive Graviton Surge, and well, BQB actually teleported right into it. Still was able to get some damage, but the Shock were already looking right at that position because of the grab, not necessarily because of the Reaper. And then they'll clean up the fight, and the round will go over to San Francisco. But fantastic brawl between two really different comps, man.
Yeah, and I would love to see, well, I think we're going to get it, is how this goes when we see both teams try and play something that's aggressive and divey. Do we see one team kind of fall back and try and play something a little bit slower, like how we saw Florida last week play BQB on the Ash, and then they played, in the first round here, the Shock, they played McCree. So what do you see from either of these teams? I don't expect Striker on the Echo. That would be a really odd pick for him. He was hovering over it the last map, and then switched to McCree right at the end.
I don't hate it against like a Genji.
No, this will be Tracer Genji.
Setup. Yeah. All right, so let's see. The replacement for Super Genji might start to take shape now, and Taiyo will be on that role now. So let's see. Florida can't really prepare for this. They're just going to have to play their own game and hope it works. And Smurf is back on the Winston now, so the Shock dispense with the Ryan comp. They really want to get the most out of this high ground and the mobility of their composition.
And I think Florida, how do they punish them for having the Zen in the mix? Are they able to find Violet in the back line and pick him off? I think that'll be huge if Florida is able to access Violet.
Smurf is low right now, forced back. Violet on the Zenyatta is such an interesting little tweak here, and yep, there it is, Discord Orb. Yaki just gets burnt down by Smurf, and like you said, if the Shock can keep him safe, Matt,
There's an odd teleport.
Value.
He's just kind of went right in on the steps. Didn't have anybody else there to help him out. I would love to also, as we see a pulse bomb come in from Striker, gets a player low, but I would love to actually get some first person of Taiyo, because we saw so much from Super last week, and we talked a lot about it. I would love to see Taiyo is going to grasp on Genji, because as you mentioned, we've seen him play some Genji in the past, but it's really like Tracer and McCree, and some of the hit scan is what we know him for primarily.
We'll see. The Mayhem are grouped up here quite a lot. Obviously, they're playing around the Lucio Moira composition, so they will stay grouped until the fight begins. We'll see how Gargoyle gets value here now, because he needs to watch his front and his backside. Now there could be a bit of a pincer going on, and he doesn't really know where to aim this coalescence, Matt. For the Shock, they can just remain hidden now and make it hard for Gangnam Jin to do much with that one. That just seems like a little bit of a tickle coalescence.
You can contest this point so easily, especially when you have a Winston in the mix. Is this a transcendence from downtown as Violet finally makes it to the point to help Smurf?
Smurf didn't expect BQB to be up on the high ground, Matt, and there had to be a transcendence to keep him alive. Taiyo's Dragon Blade falls flat, and Gangnam Jin's able to snatch that kill away from Twilight. BQB now is just keeping Choi Hyobin and Violet segmented away from Smurf. He's trying to do something with the Primal Rage. He gets a kill, but he's been isolated for a little too long thanks to BQB.
It's really nice play from BQB. He doesn't need to go in and get the kill straight away and just keep him out of the line of sight. And this will be Yaki using his Dragon Blade as you feel like you needed to put it away. As Smurf and Striker are still contesting this.
Yeah, and the Mayhem are being forced to use ultimates now to try and get the cap. And the Shock are back with 5 players, and the rally makes it feel like more than that with the extra durability they have. The bubble went on to fade as soon as he tried to dive into the fight, but Taiyo goes down early again. Here's a grab, catches 2, Pulse Bomb on Gargoyle, secures the kill. Coalescence is not going to be enough from Gangnam Jin. There's nothing on Florida to stop that right now. Sound barrier is all they have to deal with a Pulse Bomb. They're still in control of the Shock, and now Violence return to the fight, continuing to accrue value. Striker's not being watched, and he's able to chase Chris down. Gangnam Jin to the backside, takes a face full of damage. Does he have the fade? Yes, but he's forced to use it at a really inopportune moment, and Choi Hyobin is running riot on the point. Look on the side. You see at the top of your screen, that's where the Moira is right now, but Gangnam Jin spent so much time running away from Striker that it couldn't get much done, and Violent gladly steps into the grab with this Transcendence available. That's just what the Shock needed. And now overtime, Matt, she's ticking down.
That is unbelievable there from San Francisco. They got that from 60 all the way to 100, and all they had really was, BQB did a great job pressuring Violet out. A Smurf and Striker just juggling the point. So good as they're able to keep the point in their favor. And it's a little bit of what we talked about last weekend again. Was the Taiyo Genji something extremely special? Same with Super? Not really. No, they played it at a high level. But it's just Smurf and Striker so good together that they're able to just keep the point, juggling it between them to allow the rest of the team to come back. And Florida uses all their ultimates there. It gets no value whatsoever.
Listen, if you can 1v4 with Primal Rage and get the enemy's Lucio while your reinforcements are coming in, not being killed by the enemy Reaper who's just holding him at bay, then you're off to a very good start in those fights. Great way to stagger is to at least trade kills, but even more so is just to spend a lot of time stalling out. That was a good example of San Francisco getting away with something they really shouldn't have, and the Florida Mayhem have to be heated going into map 2, which, by the way, is right around the corner. So stay cool. We'll see you for that. Just a second.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Pringles Wavy. Big crunch, big flavor. And by Zip Chair Gaming, the official chair supplier of the Overwatch League.
And a new look and no shortage of flair from the San Francisco Shock in that first map. Oasis handily goes in their favor despite the rounds themselves being very, very close. San Francisco able to get a huge stall on City Center there to secure the series, and Florida probably feeling a little bit cheated by that last round.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of went under the radar last week with the, you don't call it shenanigans, because supposedly Super was their best Genji. They played him. I think what you saw, though, is that Smurf and Striker in combination are just such a great combo that they're going to be difficult for anybody to beat, regardless of the other players playing for San Francisco, especially when you have Violet back there, Twilight as well. It's such a stacked roster.
We spent a lot of time in the previous series, if you just joined us, you missed out, of course, Atlanta versus Boston, about how important it is for the Tracer, or the McCree in this case, but the Tracer and the Winston to be on the same page, or those two parts of that dive to be in sync. We saw that stall was orchestrated by just those two players, and the Mayhem weren't able to come up with an answer, so perhaps a change is in order as they bring Byram in for Chris, and we kind of know what this means, Matt, based on what we know Byram to play.
It means no Lucio. We've seen him play the Brig now, but it'll be for the Batiste, so they can play Zen and Batiste at the same time. Chris does not really play the flex supports from what we've seen, really just like Lucio Brig, so this also gives them the Brig look, but also the flexibility to play another flex support.
And Kings Row is going to be our next map in this series. Again, without the Lucio there, we maybe see less of Florida Mayhem really just trying to butt heads and more of them just trying to work down those shields. Maybe we go back to, seeing a little bit more of that Sigma inclusion here. But San Francisco have kind of showed that they can do a lot of things. Look, we saw Taiyo's, debut on Genji, Matt. You said he didn't have to really go crazy because of what Striker was able to do.
It's also the reason, I think Johnny was going crazy on the pre-show. I think Scott may have called me and Josh idiots,
okay,
but
fair.
That's okay.
Yep.
That's fair.
Is
Everybody's entitled. Yeah, I think so. I think so. No, because we basically said that with the rest of the core of the Shock, and especially with the meta that what we're seeing right now, it's not as Genji-centric as it was when the Orisa with the nano boost and the halts, right? Like, that was all about, can your Genji get the value? This is not as much that.
Right.
This is really just all about your dive as a team.
And perhaps that's because Genji not only had nano boost, but he also had supercharger to make the blade much more effective. That just meant that, it wasn't so much a matter of holding on the blade and making sure it lined up. There was a good chance that you'd have something to supplement your Genji. Now, it's a Transcendence that can supplement your Genji if you use it offensively. A couple of teams have tried that. Hex was sort of talking about that last week, and we do see it a little bit, but your kills from the blade are much less guaranteed, so Ash and Tracer get to step now to the fore once more. San Francisco do go with Genji Tracer in a dive with Sigma.
So let's see how Florida defends against this week. They did a nice job against Atlanta. I would venture to say this is a much different beast, though, doing it against the Shock.
Right,
BQB is going to be under a ton of pressure.
Now, last time it was Edison. BQB dealt with him. Now he has to deal with Striker and maybe Smurf. Remember, Striker and Smurf look to be more in sync than Atlanta's dive and Tracer did. So bear that in mind, but Florida have played against this style. And look at what's happening here. This is sneaky. Slow and steady around the back, and then they get rid of BQB. And look at that. That's two halves of the one pincer getting to the location at the same time. What a rendezvous.
That's exactly what Atlanta did not do well last week, is you have to meet the player at the punch. So when Smurf goes in, you expect some utility to be used, whether it's like immortality, whether the coach gun to try and get away. You have to have a Tracer or Genji meet that next player at that point and be able to take him out. Byram immediately goes to break.
Yeah, and why not? You're just going to get stomped on. That's a different map than what we saw on Volskaya with Atlanta, right? So yeah, it's maybe easy to get around behind people as Winston on this map if you can control the high ground. So just want to make that clear. But still, San Francisco did exactly what their composition is designed to do, and it's forced Byram off the Zenyatta. Now that Mayhem can't play the greedier style it's going to be harder to control Smurf outwardly with damage. Let's see how they go. Here's the dive. Straight away, M-Matrix comes out. The shock very quickly get out of line of sight. They bait that ultimate.
It's beautiful.
Oh, man.
Blade now? Transcendence plus Blade. Here it is, yeah.
Okay, so Immortality Field is down instantly, and there it is. Taiyo makes the 2K with the Dragon Blade. Great to be saying his name once more after so many years in San Francisco. That was a masterclass in playing against this composition.
Yep, and then they stagger out Yaki a little bit. So they'll come back here, the Florida Mayhem, and they'll have a Blade in the mix. I mean, they're having so much fun, the Shock team. They're just kind of clowning around. So
it's a very deep conversation occurring between Smurf and Striker.
They're on a stealth mission there over there on the left. You can see them through the outline on the screen.
Let's see how this goes. Bob in first, so straight into the back line now. Byram getting pressured. BQB very low. They keep him alive, though. Only just, though. Let's see how long they can do that for. Okay, a lot of ultimates now from San Francisco, but they get
the card.
Checkpoint, dude. Oh, they get him up with the flux, and this is... right now, this is looking far less close than I thought it would be. You know what's crazy?
Same.
San Francisco get to have their cake and eat it too, right? They force Florida off the Zenyatta. They get to keep playing Violet on the Zen, so he can back Taiyo up even more with Transcendence, and they get that quote-unquote greedy extra Discord orb in play, because Florida cannot pressure Violet right now.
And what do you do if you're Florida? Okay, so you're gonna have to blade this. Okay. And you get nothing.
Next. I mean, Violet just stands
is...
inside the immortality. There's no immortality field, sorry. There's no Batista. He just stands back and is able to be kept alive. That's heartbreaking for Florida.
All right, so now you'll have Rally and Gravitic Flux. You have to get something here.
Okay, there it is. Smurf down. Kinetic Grasp keeps Gargoyle alive a little bit longer, but the Winston is missing here. Still San Francisco, a Transcendence, and they can go with a Blade here for Taiyo now as well. Once more, he's able just to bask in the rays of Transcendence while he swings wildly with the Blade. And one more, actually would have had him to kill on a BQB, but looks like he backed away into Spawn still. That was the combo that San Francisco needed. And this is terrifying. This is so frightening that this team now is starting to do this to Florida Mayhem of all teams.
I mean, different week, a little bit of a different roster for the Shock, but it looks exactly like it did against Boston. And we know how good Florida is, right? This is a really impressive showing early on here for the San Francisco Shock. Which, if you're Florida, what do you even do at this point? One thing from Florida we haven't seen them do at all, and we've seen them play Reaper with a Genji. We've seen them play some Ashe with Genji. We haven't seen them play Tracer Genji. Will they try and play some of that? Potentially, you could have the Shock try and play like an Ashe here on defense.
Well, remember, this is what we talked about this with Florida. Does their hero pool allow for them to play that?
I mean, we've seen BQB play Tracer in the past.
Not a lot.
We've seen them play like more Sombra. And then it makes it weird, right? Because you would never, like, Yaki is not going to play anything in that. He could play like a Tracer, but Yaki, you don't really need that. So they'll play Ashe with Genji, and look at this, a Shock on defense. Let's just come out with Dive again.
Yeah, why not? Punish the back line here. Look at the crosshair! Look at it!
There it is.
It's so big! It's gigantic! What a comically large crosshair!
That reminds me of when XQC used to play like Junkrat, and he had this massive crosshair on his screen.
Yeah, oh yeah, with the pixelated one that we used to do this. Yeah. But that's no meme. Taiyo plays with that crosshair. People have seen his stream. It's a meme in his stream. I don't know, he just does. There's even a Contenders team named after his crosshair.
That's pretty cool.
Was it Contenders or Open Division? Either way, yeah. I think it's like Decod and some of his ex-teammates there. So I mean, it's a meme, but okay. Whatever floats your boat, bro. So San Francisco, okay, they play this dive defense. Who are they targeting here with this Genji Tracer?
They're waiting to get a good grasp on where BQB is going to play. Is Yaki will get that first kill on a Taiyo. They'll take out Smurf. So playing a little bit defensively here, definitely working out for Florida Mayhem thus far. They're able to get 2 pickoffs. The Shock have to back out.
Yeah, not a great start here for San Francisco. Losing one of their players so early on here. Florida, I think they're going to be mad as well. San Francisco are playing, I would say, like it is the greediest form of this kind of composition, right? They're still playing 2 dive. They're playing with the Zenyatta here. And they're going to try and stall the point out a little bit more and see if this works out. Smurf, nope, they're blown up, and the point is capped by Florida.
Yeah, they had Taiyo come down to try and contest the point, and he got so low.
Okay,
Smurf
okay.
had to jump in as Taiyo take out Yaki here as they exit. But good point A take here for the Florida Mayhem. So after getting ran through on defense, they answer back in a big way, taking that point A rather quickly.
San Francisco, not a really great opportunity to build ultimates back on that point. Just a pulse one to work with right now, which a little bit hard to see where that gets the most value against this setup. Maybe stuck to fate to dissuade him diving in. They're giving a lot of ground, man.
They are.
A lot of ground.
And they're going to be around this corner here, able to drop that Ant Matrix. I wonder if, as soon as it comes down, like one of the things they could do is they could either jump past it, right? Or look at this, they just back out around the corner. So it's clear that the Shock want to play for like one final fight here before second point.
Yeah, I mean, they are forced to break line of sight there. BQB and an amplification matrix is a bit scary, but Gargoyle pressured down. Here comes Taiyo once more with the Dragon Blade. Transcendence not used yet by Violet. He's holding on to it, so Taiyo wasn't essentially invincible, and it gets used later in the fight to counter Yaki's blade.
It's a good adjustment, I think, using the Transcendence to block the blade this time. It'll be a Gravitic Flux here from Gargoyle. A lot of players go up, they come right back down, as that'll be both supports taken out by Gargoyle. Yaki will finish off Choi as the Florida Mayhem on offense looking good.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see now, the look from two evenly matched teams on dive, right? Like no defense. Essentially, both teams are struggling as we may have some extra innings here as Striker is unable to deal with Yaki. Shots deflected back at him, and Florida have a gigantic time bank to work with as well.
And do you make a change here if you're the Shock? Do you try and play something a little bit slower?
They're playing Zen Brie.
Yeah, do you bring in like a Batiste? That's the decision that the Florida Mayhem they went back and forth with, right?
Usually it's like Zen Batiste, right? If they're trying to go for the Zenyatta at all. Okay, we'll see how this works out. So Yaki's down. Taiyo finds him before the Gravitic Flux, I think, and doesn't quite get away. But BQB is living dangerously here. Needs to coach gun himself backwards. Bob is down. And Striker just makes sure no one else is going to try and push up too quickly.
So pulse bomb for Striker. Who's a target here? Really, BQB, Byram maybe. Some shields in the way there, as BQB did get a nice angle.
All right, they want to take that high ground, which I think they have done here. Striker's still just standing on the cart, though, and anyone who steps up is prone to get stuck with a bomb. But there's that Fate, yeah, working really hard to get the high ground control now to give Yaki a staging ground for this next fight. That's a really early immortality field there. Okay, Choi still goes down, though, but with that field missing, here's the Transcendence. So the Shock get aggressive this time behind it instead of waiting for the blade from Yaki. So this could punish them now. Taiyo pressured down a bit. Twilight doesn't have a shield bash clearly. Yaki gets it with just 2 HP left, but this is a good fight for San Francisco now.
Oh, without a doubt. They use a Transcendence. They get Smurf in a position, Taiyo as well, and they're able to result in some kills. And now you have a blade for this next fight if you're the Shock. And I completely agree with you. I think they used the Immortality field, the Florida Mayhem, a little bit earlier there, too early. Because you had Striker lurking with a pulse bomb on the outside. They use it before he even gets in position to drop it.
Listen, if it's to save a player, though, is it ever too early? Like, if you would lose the player otherwise?
I mean, I guess you're kind of forced to use it in that situation.
No, yeah, so that's a knock against the person that used it, and more credit to the team that forced it.
Right.
Right, he's rally. Okay, good. Looking at the backline, you saw exactly where Smurf was trying to go. That Immortality field is down, and Taiyo has the blade once more. Gonna have to get out, though. There as Twilight tries to pop the rally just to make the Shock more durable going in, and it works like an absolute treat. And here's Violet, getting to play the Zen. Just getting everything he wants in life, really. Christmas comes early. He's gonna sling some orbs. He's already found 2 kills in this fight and build the Transcendence. That could be a big momentum shift.
And the thing that's most impressive for me when we see Violet play a Zen in this type of position, and we see other teams try and play the Zen, now, they don't really dedicate a ton of resources, right? He's able to stay alive, not strictly on his own, so to speak, but he's able to defend himself against the dive time and time again. It's not really a crutch with him on the Zen. It's really impressive.
It's absurd, isn't it? So, Transcendence is there. Bob sent out there. You see straight towards Twilight now, so he'll have to shield a little bit. And that, I mean, Discord Orb, pretty good ability, by the way. Yeah, nice. Bob's down already. Choikobin over on the Diva now. Gives him more of that high ground control. Sigma's less flexible in terms of, moving around the map, per se. And here's a Primal Rage. That's probably to try and deal with Violet or maybe force something out there. But Smurf gets way more value on his. I think at least Fate was looking for an environmental kill or something, Matt, but the backline of the Shock is just way too heavy and violent again on this Zenyatta. He's doing too much, man.
This takes out a Brig on the point. Why not? So now he had a really good time for the Florida Mayhem getting checkpoint B going into C. They have gotten stalled out, and what is this?
Just 7 final blows. Why are you doing this? Okay, now all right, they get spotted out there. Good due diligence from BQB. Oh my, Violet and Twilight, what a frightening duo.
So you have Rally coming in here, or the Shock Mayhem just waiting it out.
Do you think that Troy gets to switch from Sigma because Violet says I don't need that extra peel from Accretion and the shielding?
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
that's mind-blowing. I mean, if you can play this composition and not get picked off, then I mean, you're probably going to win.
Really good for stall, self-destruct as well. So Striker, I feel like, ooh, nice headshot there from BQB. That could be the opening.
Yeah, I mean, you have no shield, but Striker would have been away from his team shields anyway. Nice little 180 there to get rid of a flanker. Now, what do you do with it? Transcendence is in play here for Violet. Now you see the net matrix up on the high ground for some extra damage. Taiyo is suspended in midair and brought back down. Fate's going to make sure they finish the kill here, and Trehoven jumps in and out. Gundam's just been removed here, so a chance now for San Francisco to punish without an immortality field in play. There's a pulse bomb for Striker as well. They can shut this down once more. You can't keep giving them this kind of ground, Florida. San Francisco, take. And they never give back.
They are so relentless in terms of their aggression. Like, a lot of the times you think they should back out completely. They back out for a half of a second, it seems like, heal right back up, and then get right back in there. Twilight will have a rally to deal with a lot of this, as looks like San Francisco could be going up 2-0.
All right, Bob will come in again, but he's going to be met with a Discord orb straight out of the gate, so it's going to be difficult for BQB to get real value from it. But here go the Mayhem regardless. Guynam didn't give a Discord orb early on, but Fate goes down. And that wasn't even an orb on him. Just focus fire on the enemy Winston. Accretion goes whirring overhead, but it's to try and deal with his flanking potential. It's not enough. Taiyo gets rid of the bomb, and the self-destruct gets rid of the immortality field, and now Taiyo gets to play. Fun in the sun for him as he tries to accost the Sigma in the backline, and Gargoyle already gets rid of the Accretion, but Taiyo's more concerned about the rally on the point. San Francisco are now forced back because Twilight popped his rally and went down still. Florida have the key ultimates right now, and they're going to have another immortality field for this next push.
A Striker on the Bastion coming out of the spawn here.
Get out of town! I can't believe it. And I shouldn't be surprised, but here we are. Striker now pops that one, but Smurf goes down to the Dragon Blade early in the fight. No one really gets any value out of that amplification matrix because the dive in the backline diverts so much attention away from the Mayhem. BQB down, Taiyo finds it with the blade. Striker needs Trehoven to stay alive on the point to get value out of this Bastion, but he's struggling. So much mitigation available here to the Florida Mayhem. Yaki gets in, gets himself too. That might be the answer now for the Mayhem. They are haggard, they are beaten and battered and bruised, but they're trying to get across the line, and that payload is oh so close. Now Violet comes back in, trying to go for a resurrect. He's not going to get it though. And the Shock eventually have to be denied at some point.
Yes, so Florida will complete the map, but nothing in the time bank. They were going to have to hold on for what, 3 minutes? No, 4 minutes and 8 seconds. Now is Striker trying to get cheeky with the Bastion, although at Bastion we've seen it pay off. Specifically what? It was Florida Mayhem, right? Zephyr on the Bastion on Gibraltar.
Against the Houston Outlaws.
Against the Houston Outlaws last year, I believe, right? That was a crazy play. That turned the tide. And a situation just like that as well.
Mayhem had a bunch of tools, though, to sort of shut down their damage, right? They had Deflect, they had Kinetic Grasp, quite importantly, plus the Immortality Field. So, look, I mean, you have a Bastion, that's fine, but if the enemy Immortality Field is actually behind the payload in terms of line of sight, you can't see it, maybe your angle's sort of too low, and the Bastion gets less value. I just love that San Francisco would just do that on a whim, though. They just don't really care.
It all falls apart. Like, in seriousness, if you would have had Smurf alive there, and he would have been able to contest the cart with, like, a Primal, and then Choi would have been able to play, like, really defensively around the Bastion, it probably would have paid off in a big way. But the fact that Choi has to leave that position to go contest the cart, you can see the way he's, like, positioned on the one side of it, trying to use the Matrix over the top of the cart to deny some damage going through. Would have been easier if he was close. Striker plays Reaper here instead of Tracer. And they also play with a Zarya
Yep, you're just brawling now. You want to get to the point.
Yeah, Violet Lucio here, and Twilight on the Moira. This is just a meet us on the point and fight us. Trying to take advantage of Fate maybe on the Winston with the Reaper. Yep, there goes Fate.
This is Cash Me Outside. How about that?
Yes.
Ruined by Twilight there, and yeah, the Shock have the perfect composition for playing around a point, and yep, they'll stand inside the square for long enough to win the map. Absolutely absurd scenes. I cannot believe San Francisco. More importantly, I cannot believe Smurf and Striker. Those two are ridiculous.
They've been, well, look, they were really good the other day against Boston. I think a lot of the thunder of how good they were was
13 final blows.
Was taken up, but they are looking dominant as a duo right now. You look across the league as like Winston Tracer combos. They are. It's hard to find another one that potentially is better right now.
25 final blows between Smurf and Striker, which is half of the Shock's total. 13 and 8 on Winston, bro. What? Fate goes 4 final blows, just to give you some contrast. And we're looking at 2 world-class Winston players. But this is what the Shock would provide you. This is what all these whispers about, you know, Striker, you know, waiting in the wings. He was on the bench. Was
Put in Super on Genji for the final map. Let him do a Tiaki.
No, my boy Sean Henderson is taking this one home. All right, well, we're going to go to the break now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm quite sure our experts have plenty to say. I believe they all picked San Francisco, so they're plenty to gloat about. Stick around, more from this series on the other side of this break. What a ridiculous series. You don't want to miss any of it.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by ZipChair Gaming, the official chair supplier of the Overwatch League. Hello and welcome to our game break presented by Cheesy Grooves. Zoe here, joined by Costa, as well as Reinforce and the Shock are currently in the lead 2-0 against the Florida Mayhem. So let's dive straight into the action, talking about Oasis. Reinforce, you had a lot of concern looking at how the Mayhem is approaching this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see in this game the issues with the Florida Mayhem's pretty limited roster. Keep in mind, they only have BQB and Yaki as their damaged players for this year, and so far, I mean, it's worked out pretty decently in the year, right? They played a lot of Tracer with Yaki, and they played a lot of Ashe, and double hit scan, it worked out great. Well, now we are in a meta where you preferably would like to play Dive, but Yaki is both the Genji and the Tracer player for this team, and BQB had to adapt. So we saw the Reaper come out for a little bit. Not a huge fan of that by any means. So I think you're seeing some of the issues the Florida Mayhem are having with adapting to this meta and diving correctly. So you're starting to see the Florida Mayhem perhaps struggle a bit in this meta, and I would say maybe it's time to sell your Florida Mayhem stonks, because I don't know how this is going to evolve long term, but for now I'm pretty concerned with what they're bringing to the table in terms of compositions.
Yeah, we saw this a lot more in the second map when we went to King's Row. It was very evident, and Matt and Mitch brought it up a lot. Violet on Zenyatta just feels like he's free. Because they can't play the Tracer and they want to lean more towards the Genji, Violet's pretty much walking around this game and shooting for free like it's goats all over again. He's just putting in so much damage, playing so aggressive, and he's also free to use his Transcendences wherever he wants. He died 2.3 times per 10 minutes, and he's just putting in so much damage, getting so many assists, and you can just see how valuable it is. And they're just playing so aggressive because all they have to do is wait for the Florida Mayhem to walk forward with the Ashe, with their backline, and then dive. And this just gives, you see how easily the Shock is just maneuvering and walking around. There was some momentum switch when the Shock was sort of going a little too early, or they weren't able to, hold a defensible position. But as soon as they got onto the third point, it just became the Shock show. All of a sudden, Violet and Twilight are flanking, setting up a flank on the dive. Like, they're doing whatever they want. They're having fun with the game.
Absolutely. And I mean, Reinforce, you were the one to tell everyone during our Watchpoint pre-show to keep an eye on Violet and Twilight. So far, they don't disappoint.
Yeah, they don't disappoint, and it's interesting that they've swapped roles as well, because we saw last week against the Boston Uprising that Violet was actually playing the Brigitte and Twilight was on the Zenyatta. Well, now they swapped roles, so Violet was actually playing the Zenyatta for a little bit, and then Twilight brought out the Baptiste and stuff, and he brought out the Brig. So interesting how they're very dynamic, that backline. I thought it was pretty funny. They set up some plays, some flanking plays occasionally, where Twilight took Violet under his wing and was like, hey, we're gonna have you flank a Zenyatta, and I'm gonna armor pack you up in great. So it was very fun to see this backline really come together as a duo, because keep in mind, Twilight was picked up during middle of the season, but now they're starting to come together. Violet is fragging on the Zenyatta, and sometimes they let Twilight frag on the Zenyatta. So love to see this backline come together.
Do you think they flip a coin? To see who gets to play the fun.
Who
has to play Brig?
So, right?
Heads or tails? It potentially could be that at this point, because they're both so good at it, it honestly doesn't matter.
How lovely if you can just, swap things in and out like that. So many moving pieces, and it still looks just so dominant. Speaking of moving pieces, of course, our Crunch Time presented by Cheesy Grooves had to go to the newest edition. Taiyo, we've been watching out for him on the server, playing Genji, playing Tracer. How is he doing so far, gentlemen?
Yeah, solid. I don't think he's had a phenomenal stand-up performance, but that's all he needs to do, right? He just needs to do his job, and he's doing it perfectly. We saw the Tracer look from him, which he has in his wheelhouse, which really helps the Shock when they're able to play control and sort of mix around their roster. They're not going to have that inflexibility issues like we've seen from the Mayhem. And then you just, on the Genji, his mechanics are there. He's clean. His crosshair scares me a little, but for the most part, his gameplay's good.
Yeah, that's true. I do think he's getting a bit more damage output compared to Super. I think they're playing pretty similar styles in that we're seeing Taiyo, he doesn't necessarily want to be the aggressor like someone like Sparkle does, but he's sitting back a little bit, but he's getting more shurikens in, and then the blades are, significantly better than Super's last week as well. So they've improved on that Genji position for sure with Taiyo, and I'm interested to see how he evolves, right? Because he is primarily a hit scan player, and we even saw the Tracer come out on Oasis for a little bit, but now he's swapping over to the Genji, he's fulfilling the flex role a bit more, so interesting to see how he develops those flex skills over time.
Yeah, it's definitely a change for him as a player. And of course, also, he is so new to this team. The signing has only been announced just a few days ago, and he didn't have that much practice time as of right now with the team. So far, they are looking good, and I'm super happy to see him live in action already so short after the signing. We're heading into Anubis. Costa, very quick last thoughts. What do you want to see from the Mayhem?
I think this is probably a better map in which they can play Ashe Genji. I think if they are going to win this, they need to find a way to deal with Striker. It feels like Striker is always in their backline, just creating so much space. Any time that the Florida Mayhem try and get aggressive, Striker's just unleashing clip after clip into their back. If they can find a way to deal with that, there can be more success, but we generally see Mayhem being very stubborn with the compositions that they want to play.
Well, let's see if they will switch it up for once in our second half and claw their way back into this series. For now, it is Shock leading 2-0. And with all that said, we're now heading back into the second half of this game.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Groups. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch. The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network, T-Mobile. And by State Farm. For auto, home, or renters insurance, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Welcome back, everybody. After the halftime break, this is the Overwatch League, and we just had a chance to hear from our panel of experts on, some of the woes that are affecting the Florida Mayhem. There are many of them right now, but Matthew, one I want to talk about is that Johnny brought up is a hero pool concern, right? Yaki plays both the Genji and the Tracer right now for the Florida Mayhem. Florida were able to play Ashe against the Atlanta Reign, who are playing this full dive, this Genji Tracer against them, but they are not getting the same results against the Shock with the same approach.
And one of the things that Johnny mentioned as well is there's no other damage dealers on this roster. So this is it for the Florida Mayhem. That's all they have to work with. So how do you come up with compositions? Does somebody expand their hero pool? Do you try some other stuff to make this work? Or is this only a 2-week problem? When we have all of the heroes unlocked next week, does everything kind of go back to normal for Florida?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe at the end, this doesn't actually impact where Florida end up when they get to the tournament, right?
Right. No, it very well could be. It could have no effect on them there.
Let's have a look at how Taiyo's gone so far in this series. It's a good time to check in and take his temperature. His King's Row looked a lot better. Granted, the rest of his team was definitely behind him a lot of the way, but getting close to that 10 final blows per 10 minutes stat there. So he'd be pleased, I'm sure, with his debut so far.
No, he was good, and I think you could see like a little bit more comfortable, I would say, than like Super was for most of the series. But still, when you're playing with this team and they're so strong in all their roles, in especially this meta, the Genji is not the one that wins the game, so to speak. There's a lot of other heroes that go into it. It's not like the previous one where Genji's the focal point.
Well, here you go, Matt. Temple of Anubis is one of the maps where you probably get the least value out of Tracer, because there aren't stairways to some of these platforms and she requires them to access those areas. Maybe there's a chance for the Florida Mayhem on this particular map to shine. Bear in mind, I say that, the Mayhem have not won this map this year. They've lost 3 times. I
was going to say, trying to play the Ashe on offense, if they play dive on defense, is going to be very difficult. How do you get the Ashe through the choke? Because you're not gonna play Lucio. So what are you going to do? Do you just kind of wait for the dive at the choke and then just play counter? I mean, it'll be interesting when Florida goes on offense, how they handle that.
So the compositions right now, we actually don't quite know what to expect from Florida, which is always fun. We're going to get to see them, though, in a few moments. And bear in mind, on defense, Ashe probably makes sense, right? There's no reason not to see that. On offense, it can look a little bit trickier, especially if there's a Genji that's dropping down, from the archway at the first point, continuing to harass and get a lot of ult charge as they dash through. Maybe we see that from Taiyo on offense. It's quite likely that we do. Remember, Striker can play a Sigma Kree if he wants to, or whatever. I like the Shock just because they have a deeper hero pool with this setup. Like with Florida, you don't have like a different Tracer and Genji player, and you have Chris specifically to play Lucio, so Byram, probably doesn't feel as good making that kind of switch here.
It's always difficult when you have a roster that somebody can look at, or let's say, for argument's sake, like a coach can look at. As soon as he knows what your roster's playing, you have a great idea of what they're going to play in terms of composition.
I know what team you're referring to here. This is what you said about the Chengdu Hunters a lot as well.
What? Oh yeah,
you could tell what they were playing based on who they put in.
As soon as you make the subs, it's so telegraphed on what they're about to do. Where when you have a roster that can play multiple different looks, play multiple different things, it makes it much harder to game plan against.
All right, so not a surprise to see the composition for Florida. They are playing the Zenyatta on defense here, so that's one thing. Smurf just donating some ult charge to the Church of Yaki, I see. And the BKB.
They're just trying to force Yaki down from the high ground there. Nice they don't want him to control that archway.
All right, Smurf, he did a butt dive there and quickly turned his head. That's gorgeous from BKB. And there's the Discord Orb. So although, Florida tried to play the Zen before and got punished for it now, it's a little bit harder for San Francisco to access the backline to punish the Zen usage, and then you get Discord Orbs like that on Smurf and he just explodes.
They need to get Yaki off this high ground, because when he's up there, it's going to be very difficult to have Violet get in position to make anything happen. Interesting.
He's going to try and knock them off the platform and get the high ground for the Shock. I love this. Does it work? I mean, yes. I mean, BKB now playing on the low ground, so I guess you got what you wanted. They still have a Discord Orb, though, so if both tanks don't go in at the same time, then one of them can be focused down.
You see, now they finally get the dive on the Violet and the choke, as a few players from the Shock here make it up to the high ground. The Mayhem, they know this. They're smart.
I don't know if you really want to be here. I don't think Twilight had the health pack to get. Oh, getting Gangnam Jin there is insane. Some big value there for Striker. Looking for more. Can he ask for more here? No.
No. You have to back out here if you're the Shock. The Mayhem doing a nice job their first 2 defensive stands, making some plays. The Shock committed to dive, committed to playing aggressive. They double down on it once they put Choi in on the Wrecking Ball. Do they need something different in terms of supports? That's what you would probably be wondering right now.
All right, well, here's Bob onto the point, but BQB's already gone down, so the bodyguard appears and his patron is absent. Not ideal. Yaki's Dragon Blade also looks more like a butter knife on charcoal. Not good. Just trying to imagine it. Oh, that's sick. Nicely done. That has to be an Immortality Field used now, and this opens the way, Matt, for Taiyo and the rest just to roll through the front door.
And the Amp Matrix gets dropped there by Gangnam Jin, but there's not even an opportunity for him to use it. He just gets pressured out by Striker straight away. So now the Shock will be able to take point A. They also hold on to their rally in their Dragon Blade here for the next fight. And mind you, Mitch, no support ultimate here for the Florida Mayhem. Gargoyle with a change. Well, actually, no, this. He's going to have no Gravitic Flux.
It's Byram changing here.
Yeah. It's going to be difficult because what they've been doing is they've been using their Gravitic Flux a little bit defensively sometimes. Now you don't have it. This will be rally. They're going to they're going to load him up with the armor and now send Taiyo in.
Here we go. The window's open. This is the best chance for the San Francisco Shock to close this half off. But Taiyo, that's beautiful. Gangnam Jin and Gargoyle both down. I mean, if you want big value for 2 kills, you've got it right there. And now the Shock return and stop playing with their food. You see the BQB's forced back in spawn. There's your first tick. Gargoyle's going to now step out, but Taiyo's just going to control BQB. There's nothing he could do in that 1v1. Gargoyle's also been kept away by Trigo, but that gives an extra tick and more for the San Francisco Shock. And they've got it all figured out now. It's a matter of course. Gargoyle Kinetic Grasp tries to stay alive just a little bit longer. Taiyo's forced into the moat to take the big health pack, but the Pulse Bomb is there. Gargoyle didn't have the Kinetic Grasp up to stop that one from happening. And here's a Transcendence, but Florida are trickling. Finding the kill on Striker is a huge boon for them to get back in control, and that's a dead end.
Yeah, now Troy Hoban on the point still, trying to keep this one going. Yaki with 2. Florida should be able to turn this and hold on defensively. So they do end up getting the hold in the end. They give up 94% though to the Shock.
Right, fair enough too, but you've got to hand it to Florida, Matt. They have no support ults. They're vulnerable. They switch off the Zen, obviously, because it's much easier to access the Zen as attackers now. So you go Brig, safer, and they get it done. And I love Sombra on this point, just because she can, drop the, she can hack the health pack and the moat, so it's much harder for attackers to have longer fights. They can't drop and get the mega. And it's easy for them to play that high ground and get easy hacks from above. So let's see if it works.
Oh, that Florida plays a little bit close. Big minefield here from Choi. Could do a ton of damage.
All right, Taiyo's blade gets completely shut down there by Yaki. Now he has one of his own, so that Immortality Field is not present for the Shock because they're still playing the Zen. That's a big risk for them as well. They are especially vulnerable to Genji because of that.
Yes, Yaki letting Violet know.
Maybe Striker too. Nope,
not
quite.
You don't play a Striker like that. Striker takes him out. So now we're just in more of a waiting game for the Shock to get some more players back. So they'll actually have Choi play the Zarya now. So this will give them a little bit more defense, being able to use the bubbles on whether it be Violet if he gets dove or Smurf on the way in.
Why do they need that over the Sigma? Like, what makes them want to switch to Zarya here?
It's not really a damage thing. Like Sigma would provide you like more damage, like a long range poke. When they get aggressive and dive, the Zarya bubble is great, whether it be on the Winston or the Zen to keep them alive.
No way! Smurf gets caught off from the rest of San Francisco. Doesn't even have to use his Primal to stay alive, by the way, even though he got isolated. And then the Shock get a free kill, essentially, on the Mayhem, despite having their main tank missing for that period of time. You just don't fight back for those positions.
And I believe Fate just knocked Choi out of the Gravitic Flux from Gargoyle, so they don't even get him with it. As things starting to fall apart for Florida.
You just can't let your guard down around San Francisco. The Mayhem, what more? Perfect start to the fight. You've isolated the enemy main tank. You've actually dove him apart from the rest of his team. San Francisco are stuck inside without the Winston. Just leave them. Leave them and get rid of the Winston. But they don't do that. They don't chase after Smurf, so he keeps his Primal Rage. And then he comes back in after San Francisco finally kill 5v6. It's just mental, dude.
It's wild.
It's not even Florida being bad, right? It's not.
No.
It's not. I am actually really happy with the first point and second point holds. I think, in general, their defense was good.
They're so fast to capitalize. Like they see a window, they get a pick, and they're immediately in. Really nice play, decisive play from the Shock. Do they play dive on defense? And if they do, what is the answer from Florida? Does Florida play Ashe again? It looks like, at least from what we see, it is. Choi on the D.Va.
I like this. More control of that high ground on the arch, so it's harder for Ashe to get like a good perch. And you can always go up to, even on Wrecking Ball, you can always go up to the high ground and make sure like BQB can't ever get settled here.
Yeah, no, I really like the inclusion of the D.Va. Oh, no, they actually sent Choi back, and he'll play Zarya. So, Zarya
Really?
also makes a ton of sense here. They've been doing a nice job in terms of using those... Does he get a headshot on them? Oh, it's a right click from range that Choi is able to help Violet finish him off.
And that was what I was popping off about. That was Smurf at that point was sort of separated from the rest of their team. Getting a Sombra kill like that is, I mean, Discord Orb's amazing, but I mean, that's smart for Florida. It's all right, so what does Taiyo do here? Like, who are you shielding? You want to use the Winston aggressively, right?
You can do it on the Winston, any of the other damage dealers, nobody, because you're dead.
It's so risky, man. Like, no shield. If BQB gets in position, like, this is my. I would have been interested to see what a D.Va can do then to control this space instead of the Winston, but it's fair enough.
I think the issue with the D.Va would have been not having... Well, I mean, you would have had enough protection, I think, for the Zen. I think it would have been hard for the D.Va to play on the bridge and far away, and like getting back up to the choke early on.
Can I ask you, in what situations you would rather have Brig and not Batiste with the Zen, right? You want to take your Zen either way, so normally it'd be like Brig Batiste, right? That's the standard. But you take
well, what do you? Why would you need it? What does the Batiste give you here, really? You don't have anything long range for Amp Matrix outside of the Zen. Immortality field kind of becomes secondary when you have Transcendence. So Brig gives you a little bit more brawl, gives you the armor to make everybody stronger in terms of like you can be offensive with it with like a dive, you can play defensively with it as well. I think Brig offers a lot when you're not going to play like an Ashe.
It feels like with healing throughput though, it's less safe, right? There's just less more. There's just less available burst healing there. We'll get back to it, but there's Transcendence now for San Francisco, and they might be able to stabilize a little after still losing a couple players here. San Francisco have kind of struggled at the start of this fight, but Florida can't go for the throat as quickly as they'd like.
Well, with how fast fights go in dive, you don't need the long AoE sustained healing. There's no real need for it. So you'll take the Brig with the rally for up close. You'll take the Zen Harmony Orb at range, being able to heal, and put down extra damage, also amplify the damage for the rest of the team. And you'll play for these fast kill assassinations. The point of dive loses out when the fight goes along. So you may as well play right. Why prepare yourself for that situation when it's going to be most certainly a loss regardless.
All right, well, they lose Taiyo there, so this might be a quick one, but not in the way that San Francisco would otherwise like. Self-destruct, Yaki doesn't have a dash, he doesn't have... Oh, okay. He's all right, he gets away, he did have one. All right, just that last moment. And here's a good, very good gravitic clutch from Gargoyle. What a catch. Most of the shot caught off on that right-hand side. Vita has Transcendence, though, and there's also a Radiant play for the Blade! And San Francisco, back from the dead. And now they're in the thick of it. Byram taken down by Taiyo, and once more, they can stand tall.
And with how these fights go, Violet's putting down so much damage that he has a Transcendence every other fight, maybe. So now we get, so now we're gonna get just a full-on rush here from Florida. They're just gonna try and barrel on through the front line. Moira Lucio with the Reaper. Interesting to see Gangnam Jin on the Lucio. This is also a roster thing because Chris is out because he doesn't play the Flex supports.
Yes, it's the Catch Me Outside comp for Florida now.
And this is where Choi now will go over to Zarya because they'll actually add more protection against this Reaper.
Oh, they're not ready.
He just sneaks right by.
Okay, bubble used there quite effectively. And Yaki's able to back away here, so Mayhem get a chance to regroup somewhat. They'll all be walking into a potential primal rage here. Reaper spotted. Okay, so they know where BQB is. Still, Twilight goes down. The dive starts well for the Florida Mayhem, and they are ready to brawl on the point. This Reaper's going to be a huge problem in a long fight. It's going to make it even harder for San Francisco to claw their way back. Are you kidding me? Vita finds 2 headshot kills on Gargoyle and Byron, and the third. There's no way. You can't let him do it to you like this. He's just out there ending careers, bro. Come on.
That's unreal. You know, Scott may even be still playing if he was playing with Violet. I mean, the guy's crazy.
Oh, man. I mean...
they get the first pick off, mind you, completely serious is, and then he just double headshot, one on the Byram, takes him out, and then picks off the Zarya at range as well.
Okay, now the Shock are in a bit more trouble though. Transcendence is in play, but there's only 3 up. Again,
are they in trouble? You said that 4 times, so I don't know if I believe you.
Look,
now they do look in trouble, yeah.
So Transcendence there expires. Troy gets a great bubble onto these end, but it just sort of prolongs his life a little bit longer. For all the great things that San Francisco have done here, Matt, they'd still be behind in time back. If Florida were able to cap now, Smurf finally succumbs and Twilight can't get to the point.
Right.
Absolute madness.
So they're finally able to get through. They make the Reaper composition that Johnny did not like, I believe. To be honest, I didn't really love the Reaper type of compositions either. But they were able to make it work there. Where, I think, debatably on the first map, the Reaper with the teleports from BQB is when they had control the most.
Yeah, but it's much harder to catch people by surprise when you using it on attack on this point.
Right. Yeah, and how you can't replicate the Reaper strategy on every point on every map. Like it's good here because you're forcing these fights in the close quarter. There's a lot of different angles to take. The King's Row, right? And so you can't really make Reaper work there in that type of scenario. So it's a composition they can bust out at times. It's not something yet again though that they can fall back on and play consistently.
And we go again now. Florida Mayhem. Okay, so they actually don't start with the Zen here. They actually just want a full hold of this point by the looks. They're playing the safest sort of version of their preferred composition right now. And San Francisco, in fairness, they struggled with this because of the Zen last time, because Smurf kept getting blown up instantly by Discord. Now that's not an issue, but so let's see if San Francisco, how quickly they can identify that and how quickly they adapt, because they actually do have a Diva here for Choi. But it's full dive.
So let's see.
They don't really have time to change comps though.
No.
Can they wrestle this high ground from Yaki? Taiyo doesn't really seem comfortable taking that fight, but Yaki's forced back anyway by Smurf. It just means this is a bit slower for San Francisco now.
It's an odd angle to take that fight, and then also you're worried about the damage from like an Ashe at range. Just turning to your side and then getting picked off once as Taiyo gets really weak. Has to use the dash to stay alive. And look at this, Choi's already found an angle on the backside, so the Florida Mayhem are getting surrounded rather quickly here.
But there's no Zen for Choi to chase, so he's going to eventually have to join the main play anyway. You can see him right here now. Taiyo down to an accretion though, not good. Taiyo, I mean, has been struggling so far, at least in this particular round, to get much done. And Yaki now should be able to clean up Choi Kyobin, and that should be pretty well curtains for San Francisco on this point. I say it so it seems much more impressive when they manage to, you know, exceed expectations and capture, but it's looking tough for them right now, but Fate can't quite commit to that kill.
They may get a Transcendence here from Violet. And drop down and try and fight this. As somebody's got to touch, it'll be Choi.
All right, Choi makes some space. Here comes the bomb. That got forced out. Transcendence is in play now, and Twilight drops down onto the point to try and fight as well. It's a brawl here, but Yaki comes in second with the blade. What can he get done with it? He finds Twilight, but Violet again, sorry, gets rid of Gargoyle. It's a brawl, but San Francisco have the players right now on a pulse bomb. Don't need to use it to get rid of Byram, I'd say. Maybe on a larger target like a Winston, but Striker holds it for a little bit too long. He's not expecting the headshot from Yaki to finish him off, and Florida, nicely done. They hold on point B, and they look the better team on this map.
Yeah, nice job from Florida Mayhem there. Never saw Blade come through, never saw the pulse bomb come through from the Shock, and now Florida, a chance to win a map. So we were really kind of looking at after halftime as this series was not looking too close. Is now Florida can maybe make it interesting.
I like that. I mean, you know, Florida, this time they switch over to a bit more of a durable composition. There was a moment there where you saw Fate chase Taiyo briefly over towards that right side. He just had some incredible discipline not to over-chased that kill. Even though Taiyo was like 40 HP, he could have gone a bit further, but he backed up. And this is just the quality you're actually seeing from both of these teams right now. And I'll be honest with you, it was actually a really difficult round for the DPS from San Francisco. Both Taiyo and Striker, I mean, they're finding kills, sure, but they are paying dearly for them. I mean, Taiyo's 11-10, final blows to death. Striker's 8-8, so neither of their dive heroes for San Francisco are getting clean kills. And these two teams have about the same number of kills each.
And we'll take a look here from the overhead POV with about 20 seconds to go. So this is when they were able to get up that high ground control is.
They wrap around the point of bunch.
Yeah.
Look at the retreat here. Look at this really quick back up, and that was just before reinforcements came in. So they did well, but you saw that Choi Herman got split off really early there.
So Choi plays the D.Va this time.
Okay.
Flora has enough time here to see this and maybe put Gargoyle on the Zarya. Zarya is pretty strong against D.Va, also would provide a little bit more
Cleanse the
safety.
orb from Zen.
Yeah, cleanse the orb from Zen. Be something that we could definitely potentially see.
Fate a little low. He actually jumped away from where the Immortality field was. Fortunately, he doubles back and is able to be healed up without being removed. BKB, where is Striker?
He's
Not
trying
really
to find
sure.
him, yeah.
It's like he's decided he can't be bothered wasting the energy doing 180s with his mouse to find him for now.
Yep, getting more high ground though here for Florida.
Choi wants to take it, spots Yaki quite far forward. Taiyo is trying to stay hidden at the start of this fight here. He actually doesn't want to be aggressive at all. He wants to let these tanks do that for him.
BQB drops.
I mean, Smirk has got blown up there. Shield bashed, I think, pretty quickly. And yeah, San Francisco actually the more passive team now. Taiyo is able to find that kill on Fate. He might be able to save the day here. Yes, gets rid of Byram. He's able to pick himself up because he went around the corner, but Gargoyle still catches him with those bouncing hyperspheres. And Twilight's in deep trouble if he can't back away now. He has his shield. He's trying to weave it in there, but it's not enough. And Florida bounce back here on the Temple of Anubis, getting their first win on the map for the season. Looking very much recovered from the first two maps here, and they're really going to make this one competitive, I feel.
Yes, the defense from the Shock there on that point A was not good either time. That one, they end up giving up high ground control. Florida Mayhem, they wrap all the way around the right-hand side. Even they drop down, and there was just not a lot of aggression. Every time that Smurf would try and come in, they'd punish him heavily for it. So maybe Florida in the halftime, they've gone back, talked over some things, made some adjustments on how they want to play these comps.
Listen, it's as we thought as well. Temple of Anubis, Tracer struggles to get as much value. Striker was
also
much quieter on this particular map, and the Shock don't really seem to have quite enough dimensions just to sort of make that change on the fly. So they're going to have to save that, of course, as we head into map number 4, which is going to be Watch Point Gibraltar. Another map where, I mean, Tracer can get you value, but not everywhere on the map, not at all points. So I'm curious to see, Matt, what San Francisco bring, because Florida, all right, they're in lockstep now. They found a good rhythm. We'll see if they can carry it through the next map, which is just around the corner. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more after this.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by HyperX. Unleash your style, unleash your fury with HyperX Fury Memory. And by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
And the Florida Mayhem bounce back coming into map number 4 of this series, the Temple of Anubis, which is not a map they'd beaten any team on. They managed to get a W against San Francisco of all
Not
rosters.
bad for a first W.
Yeah, and honestly, they looked really good. Even when we were getting excited about individuals, Violet obviously popped off pretty well. It was the Mayhem who just had the right answer each time. A lot of the time we spend, looking at is this team playing Zen? Are they playing the Brig instead? What does the dive look like? All that sort of stuff. But it looks like maybe that map kind of suits the Ashe play just a little more.
Right, but when we go to Gibraltar, which will be the next map, it's a good map for long-range hit scan as well. It's a map that we've seen Widowmaker being played on a ton in the past. Widowmaker not available.
Right.
But you could still play Ashe, and maybe that's a more effective composition here. Genji can control the high ground with the Ashe at long range, play the dive in terms of tank. It could be another good map for Florida.
Gibraltar's actually a really weird map with this current hero pool right now because Ana, Orisa, and Widowmaker are 3 very popular heroes on Gibraltar specifically because of the layout of the map. Now, with those 3 all unavailable, teams have to play a rather different style than maybe they would sort of gravitate to under normal conditions. So we will need to see these rosters innovate or at least find ways to make their preferred compositions work for them. San Francisco's DPS, pretty quiet in that previous map. Maybe overshadowed by their backline a little bit, but regardless, not able to find a lot of the crucial kills that they needed to get. And I don't mind if Florida sort of switched over and said, okay, we're just going to play, a Reaper-based composition to get that point B and set ourselves up with a bigger time bank.
And maybe you see Striker play something like an Ashe potentially, although if you were going to have some type of situation where you switch from Tracer to Ashe, and then maybe you also wanted to play the Tracer at some point, you'd think maybe you would see Ons come in. Because Ons, we've seen him play a little bit of the Tracer, we've seen him play Ashe a considerable amount, like McCree. This would be kind of the situation you would want him in for, but it seems like you're going to see Striker in yet again. So looks like we're going to see another form of Tracer Genji here for the shot.
I mean, they just told Arms to take a fortnight off with Widowmaker out of the pool. They said, don't stress about it, bro. Just go play ladder and come back in week 3. But yeah, so obviously, on this map now, we're not really going to see snipers being played that much at all. Maybe Ashe to a degree, but it's much harder for obviously Ashe to get the kind of space that she needs to. And you'll notice that not always easy to get clean headshots scoped in with Ashe. Obviously there's a little bit of time lag on those shots, so it requires a little bit more skill to employ. But this sort of begs the question, right? You've got verticality here. Maybe Batiste becomes a little bit more valuable to you. You definitely, expect to see a little bit more aggressive dive from attackers because they're going to try and take high ground when they can, right? This map, it feels awful if you're having to play from the low ground with like a Winston. If I see Zarya here, I'll be kind of shocked. Like, this is the kind of map where she doesn't always really seem to have many great spots to do her thing, but these teams want to take it just to try and inoculate their Winston against Discord Orb and getting blown up immediately. It gives them a bit more certainty that at least the Winston will get to their target. Now, Florida,
potentially more dive with D.Va.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the D.Va comes in here. Florida are not only borrowing some strats from the Shock by the looks of things, they borrow the hashtag and it works out pretty nicely in number 3. Kudos.
You can do that, just borrow it with a hashtag?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they seem to think it worked. I love that idea of teams using the opposition's hashtags. Do you remember the Season 1 hashtags for some of these teams?
Oh,
incredible, dude.
What were they? I'm trying to think of some.
So, do you remember Philly Fusions?
Oh, the one that they misspelled.
Yeah, they misspelled. They stuck with it because no one would ever let them hear the end of it. I mean, I think San Francisco's will shock the world. I think Bring the Mayhem, which is still one we're seeing at the moment. For other reasons.
Avast made Bring the Mayhem legendary. It's so funny because you mentioned the hashtags. I was playing some games the other day, and I was like trying to change my skins, and the game started, so I got locked on one. And I get in, and it's the Valiant in like the green. And I was like, man. I was like, I like the blue so much better. I was like, I'm very happy that they changed.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Florida Mayhem skins, they're still in the game as well. What were we casting? We were casting the Internal Blizzard Tournament, and a bunch of people were purposely switching to the Mayhem skins because they were so striking, the old ones. We're Vice colors now. Things have changed. Florida have gone away from fast food chains and gone over towards something that encapsulates the vibe a little more. We can appreciate that. We'll see now. San Francisco, obviously. I mean, these teams, the way they look, their hashtags, a lot about their identities have changed over the years, but you know, especially for San Francisco, how much they've changed since Season 1. So these two teams are, you know, coaching staff have put so much work into developing completely new look rosters now. And look at them, they both stand at the top of the pack.
So we'll see Florida on defense now come out. Brig Batiste, and they will play the Ash yet again. So this is a composition they've been running most of the time. Really, Kings Row, they had Byram on Zen for a little bit, and then as soon as they were not able to play any defense, they swapped.
Yep.
The Shock, I think, is the bigger question on what they play. Twilight on Brig here, yep. Does Choice stay on Diva? Possibly. Taiyo play Genji, so yeah, they're going to commit to playing this. But like I mentioned, you'll have Diva in the mix instead of a Zarya, instead of Sigma. Access more of the high ground.
All right, Smurf will be waiting here, probably on his bubble cooldown if he wants to just dive up and maybe try and draw some people down, try and tempt them into overextending against the Winston, which is pretty unlikely at this level, but still try it anyway. See Taiyo there just flying off into the distance as he has an unsuccessful time starting the dive up, and a lot of damage on Smurf early there, which the Shock, in fairness, do manage to patch up quickly.
So they get the cart going under the underpass here.
They don't control the high ground quite yet. Now
They're
they'll
trying,
transition
but you see Byram able to just hold it down by himself, really.
It's a nice angle for BQB. It's kind of a long way for the Shock to try and reach him there, and there's so many defenses in between him and them, and as soon as someone picks the corner, Taiyo has to do this. He has to force BQB down some way. Granted, he's done that successfully, so credit. But BQB just regains their position with Coach Car.
Striker got that dynamite out, but they weren't able to take advantage of it straight away. The dynamite was used under the bridge. Smurf taking a ton of damage, but Smurf able to finish off BQB. You see how many players are low here on the Shock. So they have to just wait for a second. They heal everybody back up to about half. Now they know where both supports are.
Taiyo just does not want to seem to really dive deep into these fights, right? He backs up. He wants Smurf to be the first one in there almost always. And so, I mean, it's a similar to the style that we actually saw from Super, right? Sort of wait back for your main tank to go in, then follow up.
If you can make the Zen work, the Transcendence is so huge compared to Amp Matrix, right? It's just some teams just can't keep the Zen alive.
Well, you can't line of sight a Transcendence, right? The enemy team's going to use it and just going to barrel forward towards you. So, all right, the Mayhem win the fight.
That was pretty
here.
clean.
Extremely so. Yaki with a fantastic little passage to play. And the Shock still have that checkpoint, but both teams have banked a ton of ultimates here. Exception, obviously, Vilo having used his trans already.
It's Florida now. They have the high ground here for BQB. This is where he could be even more effective. And they have 5 ultimates. It's he'll be really
very hard, but Yaki's actually forced back there by the self-destructory Hoban. Very good space creation.
put down any damage. And now Yaki with Blade, you're going to have the Transcendence to play defense against this.
Here it is. Blade comes in, immediately goes to the Transcendence, and BQB sitting very far back here. San Francisco are happy with just surviving that, but then they get a bonus kill. Fate is starting to feed, man. He's four deaths, only one elimination for him, no final blows. Taiyo, I mean, compromising for him to get caught in that gravitic flux, but still the momentum favors San Francisco now. They're starting to apply more pressure. Twilight and Violet, though, again, they have to do a heck of a lot from where they're standing, because Strike is trying to get all eyes off his backline. Choi Tobin, though, eventually is forced to demech.
Yeah, we'll see if it's enough here for San Francisco. I don't think so. You're going to have to wait for Choi and Smurf to come back. I think there you want to have Twilight obviously be a little bit closer. It looks like, though, Violet was getting pressured, so he had to double back, try and help him. But if they can get Twilight into position to play on the cart, let Violet to just free fire from range, they're in a good spot to take this third point with a pretty good time in the bank.
Violet, I mean, you can see, look at this aggressive positioning. So much so that Choi Hobin's like, well, you might need this defense matrix for just a moment. And yeah, look at this. Choi Hobin says, no, Yaki, high ground belongs to us now. And this is all the groundwork being laid for a successful dive. Smurf has primal, by the way, so this is definitely going to stick. And okay, the immortality field gets taken down. It almost was removed before the self-destruct, but that's the environmental kill that Smurf was looking for. Is that going to be enough, though? Striker needs to get rid of Gangnam Gym specifically. BQB isn't going to be able to get out of spawn, but Gargoyle finds one. Two players now, one player left here on the point for Florida. But Fate is back, and Violet is extremely low. Taiyo now needs to step up.
And Violet actually gets Yaki and Fate there.
I can't believe it.
They use the rally to keep him alive and give him the heals, and he's able to take out the Genji and the Winston.
It's an extra DPS. There's no other way of putting it there. Another little two-piece, and Taiyo pulls out the blade, but Violet is the most electrifying Zenyatta I have seen in quite some time. This rivals what we saw from Jonak at his peak, and I don't think that's an overstatement. Unheard of.
I don't think that's a crazy statement either. He's been that good here for San Francisco in terms of the damage that he's able to put out. And we're seeing it like a lot on the Zen today, but even when we've seen him on the Baptiste, he's been able to put down just so much damage to feel like an extra DPS at times.
And the risk here, I mean, for Florida, like, do they want to send Fate in on these suicide missions to try and get rid of Violet? No. Do they have to? Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, they leave Violet just sat there hurling orbs, and even in a 3v4 situation, the shot can actually, you know, end up coming out on top. In San Francisco, bear in mind, they are very, very highly ranked in winning fights after having their first death. But Florida are better. Florida are the best team in the league when they lose a player first. That's why they can play so aggressively. But still, I mean, late as the fight goes on and you leave a threat like that unchecked, you are going to get punished. Violet absolutely turning up at the last moments there.
This the Diva edition for the Shock was great as well. I don't think you'll see Florida play Diva, because if you're going to play the Ashe, you need the Sigma. You're going to play just inherently slower. And the TP now coming across to the other side of the high ground, that tells you definitely going to be trying to get Gargoyle into a high ground position rather quickly.
Yeah, it takes Gargoyle especially, less so BQB, just too long to get there. He doesn't want to take the stairs. No one wants to take the stairs in Overwatch. That's why everyone has all these abilities. Stairs completely redundant. It's just going to be platforms.
Yeah. Let Tracer wall climb.
Why not? We'll see here, we see the Brig and the Batiste set up for the Florida Mayhem. So they, look, like you said, don't really see the need of taking the risk to going for Zen. And maybe it's because, yeah, they don't want to play the Diva. They don't feel like they could adequately protect Byron. So they lose out on so much impact here. And
it would have been nice.
34%.
It would have been nice for them to go back to it once, though. I mean, the issue is Gangnam Jin did not play the Brig. They played Zen Batiste instead of the Zen with the Brig. So we haven't really seen Florida have that look or try it, so we don't know if they would have been able to defend it adequately.
So it's another hero pool issue they might actually have, right? Outside of BQB not playing Tracer.
Potentially, yeah.
All right. Right now, wow, Twilight, yeah, he got actually hit by the detonation of the dynamite, so a big chunk of damage on him early on here. Still traded, but still without a Brig, Violet feels a little less safe right now. He's forced to play.
Yeah, but he'll have Transcendence though.
Yep. Oh man, he goes for it. And here's the dive. Here's where they spring forward now. The Shock put together a little sort of quasi-engagement with just a few players left, and it buys them so much time. No kills, bear in mind, from that one, so they still actually have to fight out cleanly. And here's an Ant Matrix, and oh my! Violet downrange, but BQB once more, and he, look at this space. Troy Hoban says, you need to go through me to get to him. Pulse bomb there, that didn't actually manage to claim the kill. It was actually lucky there were stairs there for Gangnam Jin. He wouldn't be able to walk away from that one in time, and what an unlikely fight win for San Francisco.
You know what's awesome is, and you can tell, like, when we watch the players, and you just watch from their point of view, like, it makes you want to go play the hero. Like, Violet's one of the players that when you watch him play Zen, like, it makes you just want to log on and just play Zen straight away. And then you're kind of disappointed because you can't do any of the stuff that he can do. But it still just looks so awesome to watch from his POV. That was actually BQB there with an Ant Matrix, and he just throws in a volley and just takes him out.
Because of course you feel safe as you're standing behind an Ant Matrix, right? Why wouldn't you feel good about that? BQB obviously wasn't thinking too much about self-preservation there.
And Violet is playing there without a shield, just looks over the top of the payload and throws some orbs down.
All right, waiting in the wings now is Taiyo with another Dragon Blade. Fate's going to use Primal, immediately gets discorded and he's already down to half health. This is not good. Look at the focus fire on him. It's pretty darn good. Okay, Rabbinic Flux. This could be a self-destructing joint. It lands on top of the cart. Going to force the Mayhem away for a little while, but Taiyo gets nothing with his Dragon Blade. Yaki is just a little bit sharper, a little bit quicker to the punch. BQB speaking of punch, melee down by Striker, and Yaki's forced to deflect on the card against a Winston. Doesn't feel great. Perfect pulse bomb connection, and Gargoyle takes an extra ton of damage from that stick.
Yes, I was gonna say Fate gets stuck, but he jumps right into Gargoyle, and Gargoyle drops out to, you know, almost 0 HP. There's 30 seconds to go. What's interesting is we thought this was be a map that could potentially favor the Ashe kind of compositions, but it's the Shock on defense who are making the dive work.
Well, yeah, I mean, Ashe probably does a lot of work unless, you know, when Zen's not ripping her head off across the map every time she peeks out of Somebody stop this man! Violet Stone Cold Killer! And
if you wanted to summarize this whole match, just that clip right there.
Some of the most incredible Zenyatta play I've ever seen, and it's not stopping here. Smurf now with the Primal Rage causing all sorts of headaches for Byram, and I'm not just talking about the bludgeoning he's copping around the head parts.
Wow.
Florida Mayhem absolutely dunked by San Francisco here on Gibraltar, and that will bring the series to an abrupt end. And I don't think I realized just how big the gulf was between these two teams, but now we know for sure, Matt.
Yeah, and I think the Florida Mayhem, they're probably looking forward to hero pools being gone next week. Having everything unlocked, I think, helps their roster in terms of flexibility a little bit more. Where the Shock, they really thrived in these first 2 weeks, and you know, bring in Taiyo, play the Genji now. I still think he's probably got some work to do on Genji. I don't think it was tremendous, and
sure.
I still think there's a lot for him to grow. We know how good of a player he is. It'll happen. But with the way that Violet, Smurf, and Striker play, and you say those three, and then you think in your head, like, oh, can I really leave out Choi and Twilight as well? And, like, you kind of can't. Like, their roster is just so good for this type of meta, which is crazy because we haven't seen them really play this ever, because this team kind of really hit their peak during GOATs and whatnot. They look to be getting even better right now.
So obviously that last map was dominated by Violet, I think, in terms of our call and what we saw. But the first part of the series was definitely dominated by a player of the match presented by Xfinity. Those honors today go to Smurf as one half of an incredibly effective pincer when it came to dive. He started off on Reinhardt and looked incredibly good from there. He is definitely what, you know, a big part of the reason why the Florida Mayhem can't play Zen against them. You know, they were not allowed to. The dive was too good, and then Violet was free to play Zen and just cause so many problems.
You could have picked the players on the Shock today out of a hat for player of the match. And you would have been right with just about anybody. Smurf, the first half of the series, though, really dictated the pace of the game with the dives, getting into the backline constantly, and then also forcing Florida to just change up their composition. They wanted to run the Zen with the Batiste for a little bit. As soon as the dive was too much from Smurf and Striker, they had to switch off to the Batiste with the Brigitte, and it just did not look good from the Florida Mayhem.
This is absurd. Smurf is approaching the 10 final blows per 10 minutes mark. That's where we grade DPSs on being really good. If a DPS player has 10, that is like, wow, this guy is really dominating. Smurf ends King's Row, 13 final blows. Final blows, not just eliminations, and 2 deaths.
Pretty decent map.
He and Striker have like 25 between them in general. Just ridiculous here. There are layers and layers and layers of incredible performers on the San Francisco Shock roster. If one isn't stepping up, unlike other teams, they just don't just fall to pieces. There are so many rosters that rely on that one player to be firing. Like the fact that Taiyo, like, you can't ask for a better debut, right? For Taiyo into the team. He doesn't, like, a debut in the league where he doesn't have to perform at his peak necessarily for them to win the game. He comes in here, talk about the path of least resistance, if you like, and his team around him is holding him up and supporting him, and he now just gets to, you know, tread water and start to get used to what it's like at the league level. It's just ridiculous. So the Shock go 2-0 now.
Right.
Obviously, they had to go up against the Mayhem, so you don't expect them to sort of be clean sweep here in terms of map differential, but a +5 is good for second place right now. And now with Hero Pulse, you know, falling off next week, you still expect San Francisco to again be an absolute front runner, a top contender here.
Without a doubt, but I think if we go back to a meta that was more like what it was pre this hero pool, you'll have to see Taiyo be able to take the game over on Genji, and I think it'll be a bit easier. You'll have the nano boost in play, you'll have the halts in play as well. There are some things though to stop the Genji during that. I know lots of the sleep dart, biotic grenade, accretion, halt from the other team. So how do the Shock play around that if that's what comes through as the meta?
Yeah, incredible stuff from the San Francisco Shock, and a great start for Taiyo coming in on DPS. And we have a special treat. We actually have a chance to hear from the man himself with Reinforce for an interview.
Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, I'm here with Taiyo after his debut performance. Nice, comfortable 3-1 victory against the Florida Mayhem. Can you tell us a bit how you felt about your debut performance in the Overwatch League?
First of all, I wish it was a 3-0. We kind of threw on Anubis, but we all knew that we could perform better, so we were just like, it doesn't really matter, just win Gibraltar, and we full held them, so it's all good.
Yeah, how did you feel about your individual play? Were you proud of your performance on the Genji and the Tracer?
Not really, I would say. Like, my team's really good, so even if I don't perform, they'll win anyways, but my Genji's been improving. I switched over to the flex role like 4 days ago, so it's been a rough 4 days, but I think my Genji has improved drastically within the 4 days of practice that I've had.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the main talking points with you joining the San Francisco Shock, right? Because in Contenders, you played a lot of hit scan. We've seen the Tracer before, we've seen the McCree, but now they picked you up, and a lot of people were talking about your Genji coming into this team. So how much experience do you have on Genji? Has it been a hard transition for you onto Genji?
Oh, it's been a while since I played Genji. I used to be a Genji main, so I mean, the mechanics and stuff are there. I just need to recalibrate my way of thinking, because I would think like a hit scan, but I need to play as like a flex, so it's been rather okay, I guess.
Do you have a play style? Like, do you see yourself as an aggressive Genji or a passive Genji? What can we expect from you this season?
I think I'm a mix of both. Like, I can see when to get aggressive, when to play passive, so I think that's one of the main strengths that I have, but most of all, like, I'm probably feeding a lot, so.
Oh, don't say that. I mean, you have Violet and Twilight to back you up, so I'm sure you're fine.
I can feed a little bit, because they always have my back.
For sure. So you did say you, of course, joined this team less than a week ago, and now you're here in the practice facility with the team. Can you talk a bit about your integration into the team? Did Crosta sit you down and were like, hey man, we're gonna put you on Genji and everything's gonna be fine? How is it like meeting the team? What has the last week been like for you on joining the Shock?
It's been crazy. Like, I came over here on Sunday night and wake up the next day and they're like, okay, we're practicing, and then without anything, they just put me on Genji, and I'm just like, okay. And then from there, the coaching staff sat me down and said, do this, do that, don't do that. And yeah, I've improved a lot. So it's been crazy.
a bit of review then. So has it been like nerve-wracking for you joining the Shock? Because obviously taking the step from contenders to the literal 2019 champions, I mean, that's quite a big step in your career. Do you feel a lot of pressure joining a championship team and now making that leap personally?
Definitely. But I want to be a champion. I want to be the best player in the world. So I think this team fits me the most.
Alright, well there you have it, of course. So I have one last question for you, Taiyo, before you have to leave, and this might be the most difficult question I've asked so far. What did you think of Super's Genji last week?
Honestly, I was watching on my phone. I didn't realize that Super was gonna play until like it was on the broadcast, and I was laughing my whole time. But I mean, he performed. It was a quick 3-0, so I don't think it's bad. Like if the team needs Super Genji, if his style fits better, I think he'll play. And this week it was just my Genji.
Alright, so there you go. Maybe you can help him pick him up a little bit. So I actually have one more question.
Yeah.
You know, of course, there's been a lot of talk about your crosshair. What's the backstory with the crosshair? Why do you like it so big? Tell us a bit about your crosshair.
I don't know. Like I used to play like really small crosshairs, but I don't know if I'm blind or not. Like I just can't see it, so I just made it as big as I could.
Does it not bother you that it's so big?
No, it doesn't. Like I actually can aim, so it helps me a lot. It helps me focus.
All right. Well, you're playing for the San Francisco Shock now, and you're on a championship team, so I don't think anyone should question your crosshair moving forward. You know, it's very interesting to see you play, and I was really impressed by your performance today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, the matches have been concluded for this Friday, but stay tuned for after the break. We have the Watchpoint post show coming up with me, Zoe, and Costa.
Bye-bye.